What separates a great player from a great leader? What turns pressure into performance and failure into fuel? Coach Kitch didn't just build athletes, he built warriors. And now he's showing executives how to think like champions. If you believe leadership is about doing it all yourself or leading by example alone, think again. This is the hard truth most leaders avoid and the mindset shift that changes everything. From coaching athletes to coaching leaders, today's guest, David Kitchen, aka Coach Kitch, has the winning playbook for success. He has spent years developing elite athletes, but his impact doesn't stop at the field. His leadership philosophy has helped CEOs, executives, and professionals adopt the mindset of champions.
You are largely beholden to how other people perform. Let your A players be A players and get out of the way. As a leader, delegation is your superpower. If they can get it 80% as good as I can fix that last 20. Stay in my zone of genius and bring people around me that can take care of the other things. If they don't know why they want to lead, they probably shouldn't be in a leadership role.
Leadership isn't about control, it's about clarity, character, and courage. Are you ready to lead like a champion? From coaching athletes to coaching leaders, today's guest, David Kitchen, aka Coach Kitch, has the winning playbook for success. He has spent years developing elite athletes, but his impact doesn't stop at the field. His leadership philosophy has helped CEOs, executives, and professionals adopt the mindset of champions. If you want to think, perform, and lead like an athlete at the top of their game, this is the coach you need to hear from. So you're my first repeat guest. Welcome back.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I get excited. I joked about it. I said, I don't know if that says something about me or you, brother, but I'm fired up to be here, man. I always love connecting with like-minded people.
Definitely says something about you. I was really impressed with your interview. So let's just jump right in. We know you work with executives and athletes. Have you noticed different leadership challenges between those groups?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So there are some nuances to it. And so we'll start with kind of the differences, but then the similarities are overwhelming. So we'll start with the differences just because it's a shorter list. The biggest difference that you see is how much of the success or the result, right, is dictated by other people's outcomes from a business standpoint, right? So from an executive standpoint, when you look at that, obviously you are at the top of the organization, right? But you don't have as much of a hand in it as you may when you're on the field or on the ice or on the, whatever the playing surface is, right? So you are largely beholden to how other people perform. And so there is that slight nuance to it where it's a little bit of this juxtaposition of like, it's not about you, but it is about you, versus when you're on an athlete, when you're talking to an elite athlete, especially from the mindset standpoint, there is that individual contributor standpoint. There is that part where it's like, hey, if I'm an elite level football player, basketball player, baseball player, whatever it may be, I can go in and take over a game. I can go over and do certain things, right? Now, obviously with respect to playing within a system and trusting the process, but it is a little bit different. I think the similarities though are the overwhelming piece, right? And understanding that, and I think we talked about this briefly in the first interview, right? Understanding that the 5 C's of leadership carry over to both sides, right? So again, just a brief refresher for people who maybe didn't listen to that first one. It's your ability to have character, right? Your ability to be have consistency in what you do, your ability to be committed, your ability to find creative ways to problem solve, and then your ability to communicate, right? Those 5 things, that's industry agnostic. That shows up no matter what you're doing and from a leadership role. And so when I look at, whether I'm talking to and coaching an elite athlete or if I'm coaching an elite entrepreneur that's trying to build a business and lead a team, we focus on those things. And then the actual tactics may change a little bit just because of the environment and the context, right? But the strategy itself is exactly the same.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, that's like that. Yesterday was a Super Bowl, and that's one of the like drags on Jaylen Herz is that he's just a system quarterback. I don't think that's the case anymore. He showed something yesterday. Some great. I mean, some of those passes were just incredible, and he runs faster than most of the people on that field. Like it's just crazy to watch. He kind of. In some ways, he reminds me of John Elway. He's just a really he scrambles around, he runs, then he throws. I mean, he's just an amazing player. So I don't know.
To build off of that, though, from a leadership perspective, right? The interesting thing with a guy like Jaylen Herz is throughout this year, they added an A player. Obviously, Saquon Barkley completely changed the identity of that team. So he had another superstar on the team. And throughout this year, he largely took a back seat. I mean, the majority of it, right? And this is the beauty of having that character and having that self-awareness, right? Of knowing what your team needs from you to be successful, right? So a night like last night, it was Jaylen's turn. It was his turn to remind everybody in the league and in the world that, hey, I'm an elite level quarterback. I can still do this thing. I can still go win games when our run game is not as effective, right? And it's also understanding that the reason he was able to be successful is because of the body of work that a guy like Saquon Barkley put together over this course of the year, right? And so the team obviously planned for that. So the same applies if you're in a business setting, right? It's knowing when it's your day and when it's not your day. Like there's times where you need to be out in front leading a project and you need to be out in front doing the thing and quote unquote scoring the touchdowns, right? To stick with the analogy. But there's also times where you just need to let your A players be A players and get out of the way and just hold the team together find other opportunities to lead, right? What are the other things that you can do that are leading? And maybe that's things like guarding the standard on paperwork, right? And making sure that the things behind the scenes are running well. Hey, this is still our internal habit system when it comes to how we handle comms, how we handle memos, how we do project management. Like all of those things may be the things that you need to step up in that moment and allow your A player, if he's a software developer or a UX or IX guy, let them handle that stuff and let them run with it, right? And see and trust them to do the job and still win games, right? And that's part of being a leader, is being able to say, hey, if when you need me, I'll be the first one over the hill with a sword in my hand. But when you don't need me, I'm happy to stand back and look at the map and talk about what we need to do next.
Yeah, I worked as a CTO for a restaurant delivery service, and we had a very forward-thinking CEO, but there were some things he just didn't quite grasp. And so like every 6 weeks or so, we had a phone that we would give to someone who would be on call, and we would forward the support line to that phone, and they get paid extra for that. But every 6 weeks, I would take the phone, and he'd say, "That's above your pay grade. Why are you doing that?" Dude, how am I supposed to know if the process is working if I don't work the process myself? And I can't just expect the team to give me accurate feedback. Maybe they're still a little scared to give feedback, but by me going and doing it, I'm getting firsthand experience on what they're going through, but I'm also finding out what our end user is going through. I mean, I used to hear things like, "Oh my gosh, when Henry's on the call, he never answers the call. It always has to go to voicemail." You find out little things that really affects your service level and you want to fix. And so then I said to him, we used to do these surveys. They were net promoter score surveys. And so we would do these surveys and I say, look how high our numbers are. Our numbers are high because of that kind of stuff. If I was the leader that never took the phone, I wouldn't know 90% of the stuff I know about that system. Yeah. So like that leads me to, what's one leadership myth that's widely believed, but it holds people back in your experience?
Oh wow, there's a lot of them that I love debunking. The first one though, the first myth that I think is absolutely awful, and I think this has been debunked a lot, but I want to hammer it home, is the myth of if you want something done right, do it yourself. Right? That is absolutely awful advice. Right? Awful advice. And as a leader, delegation is your superpower. Now, the ability to properly delegate, right, is kind of the asterisk next to that statement, right? Because there's a lot of leaders out there that think delegation is just handing things off. Now, here's the key that I like to remind people is the flip side of that is, well, I don't delegate because people don't do it as well as I can, right? Maybe true, but here's the thing. Delegation is not about them doing it as well as you can. It's about them getting it 80% of the way. If they can get it 80% as good as I can fix that last 20, right? I can fix that last 20 and not take credit for the touchdown, right? We're going to stick with that metaphor through the whole show. Not take credit for the touchdown, right? I can go that last 20 yards and score. But if I don't ever delegate that stuff, I mean, that's a waste of time, right? So I think it's being very, very clear on, does this require my specific skill set all the way through to completion, right? So there's a prime example of this is things that we do in our business, right? There's a lot of paperwork that may require my signature, but the entire packet of filling out a contract for us to go speak somewhere or do a consulting engagement, that doesn't require me, right? All that requires me is the signature at the end, right? So I trust my people to fill out that contract, find it, make sure it's clear, right? And then I'll read it over and I'll make sure, and then I'll put my signature on it, right? And so I think, yeah, that myth is the first one, is definitely, if you want things done right, do it yourself. I think that's just a absolute myth. The second one is that leadership by example is the only way or is the best way, right? It's not. And then the thing that I want to point out about that is sometimes as leaders, not sometimes, most of the times as leaders, we're put in a role because we have a specific proficiency. We have a specific skill set that allows us to be in that role. And so we may be able to do things at a really high level. Sometimes by just leading by example, we actually alienate people because we set a pace that's unrealistic for them. They don't have the 20 years of experience that you have or the 10 years of experience that you have in a certain thing. They're still learning. And so by you just saying, just watch me, is not enough, right? We have to take a coaching approach where it's let me meet you where you're at and bring you along so that we can pick up your speed. But by just setting an unrealistic pace and saying I'm leading by example is not leadership, right? It's not leadership. In my opinion, it's actually ego, right? It's saying, hey, watch how fast I can do this, right? Rather than just let me meet you where you're at, coach you along the way, and then watch and then step out of the way and let you run the race.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like, to talk about the first one about, it only is done right if I do it myself. I feel like, how can you expect your team to learn anything if you don't let them do the job? One of the things I preach in my decentralized A-team method is take a step back and, you hired them for a reason. And I really think the key to all of it is hiring the right people, right? Like making sure that the process you go through for hiring is solid, and that if you continually having problems with the people you hire, it's not really the people you hire, it's how you did the hiring. And once you have that team, well, if like, to use my tech stuff, if I've got a database administrator, he knows how to do that job way better than I ever would. Why would I ever think of stepping in here? Move aside. Let me do this. Let him do the job. I hired him for that reason. And, and then the following, leading by example. I mean, on the one hand, if you expect people to, work on a Saturday, you'd better be willing to work on a Saturday.
Right. Yep.
But beyond that kind of stuff, I'm with you. What is someone supposed to do? Here, watch me go do. It's kind of like hold my beer, kind of that thing, here, hold my beer, watch me do this. Why? You hired me to do it. Why are you doing it? I mean, it just doesn't make it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I think it's been, I actually challenged someone online today who said that there's no such thing as leadership today, that people are taught, leaders, I put it in quotes, are taught to divide people. And so I was really concerned about that. So I said, hey, tell me your story. I'm waiting to hear what that story is, because who the heck is teaching people to divide people and calling that a successful leader? I'd call that an unsuccessful leader. If you got a staff of 10 people and they're all fighting with each other all the time, you did something wrong. You definitely did something wrong.
Absolutely. And it's, go ahead. Yeah, it's interesting too. Like the just a little nugget for people to take home, right? The reminder that I give executives is, to your point about hiring, is you don't buy a dog and bark for it. Right. And we do it all the time in business. We hire people and then we try and do their job, or we don't let them do their job to the highest level. And to your point about also knowing who you hire, right? There has to be a list of tangibles and intangibles. And I think that the hiring process for a lot of corporate America is very standardized and very broken. And I think that you're not necessarily hiring. You need to be hiring not only for the role and the specific, technical skills that person needs, but also, and I know people hate hearing this, but you have to be hiring from a culture fit. You have to be hiring from a vision standpoint too, right? Because one of the mistakes that a lot of businesses make is they hire somebody because they need that person now, but that person may not be the job for 6 months from now. Right? That person may not be the person for where the company is going to be in 6 to 8 months or a year. And so you have to ask yourself, is this an immediate need hire? And am I doing that out of this, or am I doing this vision based where it's somebody that can then, and so I think you have to have those almost like unofficial succession planning kind of in your head of like, okay, where do I see this person? Because for me personally, now I'm in a smaller organization, so I can speak, a little bit differently. We can be a little bit more picky, and there's some different things that we can do from an agility standpoint, from a hiring standpoint. But a lot of times I look at somebody when I bring them onto our team and I say, okay, if we were to 10x tomorrow, where would this person then fit into the organizational chart?
Oh,
Are they obsolete, or are they redundant, or are they somebody that can then grow into XYZ, right? So for example, we brought on a business development, a director of business development. In my mind, I see him then to be the VP of business development, right? So if we 10x tomorrow, he's now going to run the entire business development department, right? Now, does that mean that I hired him just because he's a great salesman? Absolutely not. There were better salesmen that looked for the jet that we interviewed and that we had conversations with. He had the best mix for me personally of sales skills where he could do the job right now, but he also had that leadership potential, right? And he also fit our vision. And so I think depending on the size of your organization and your HR practices, those are things to consider, right? And it sets you up for success long term.
well, and it makes sense because you're hoping for growth in your business. And so
yeah, if you're not, what are you doing?
Right. So when you hire somebody, you kind of have to consider, are they, I'm spending this time training them. Are they going to be able to like run with this later when they're going to have to run with it because I'm no longer going to be able to help them with that. And so to your point, are they going to be obsolete later or what's going to happen? I mean, it's a piece that most people don't think ahead towards. And I think it's because when they say failing to plan is planning to fail, I really think that fits here because if you don't plan what your future growth's going to look like for, say, like you're talking about your business development, the hope there would be that, now one day you might have 25 salespeople working full time for you. You're not managing 25 salespeople and doing everything else you do. That's not going to work. But this guy that you brought in, he's going to learn everything and keep pushing him. And if he has leadership skills, that's perfect. He doesn't have to be the best salesperson right now. He just has to have what you need to get you to that next level, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Let's talk about your business a little bit. So, you built Edge Leadership Academy from the ground up. And so what were your biggest challenges in leading your organization and how did your coaching background help?
Oh my gosh, man, so many challenges, so many lessons, and entrepreneurship, to put it plainly, is a war of attrition, right? It's about pain management. It's how well can you tolerate the discomfort of the growth, right? Because you have to hear hard truths about yourself, and it's the best exercise in personal development that anybody can ever do, is to start a business. And for me personally, man, there was a lot of things that I had to clean up, right? And one of those was consistently conveying clarity in my message, right? So I was conveying the message and the vision, but consistently clarifying that of like, okay, what do the tactical steps along the way look like, rather than the big picture, right? And so one of the things that we did to alleviate that is I brought in a business partner who is an operator. I'm a visionary. He's an operator. And so I tell him I want a pink elephant. He translates that to the team to what steps do we need to take to make that pink elephant appear, right? And so that was one of the big things that I had to figure out and know about myself. And that was challenging for me because I'm one of those people. I'm a type A, I think I can learn everything type guy. And so it's like I had to learn, hey, yes, I could learn that, but it's not worth my time. Right. What's actually worth my time is to stay in my zone of genius and do the things, and I use the word genius very lightly, by the way. But stay in my zone of genius and do the things that I know I'm good at and bring people around me that can take care of the other things. Right. So I needed that translator. I needed somebody that was that buffer. The other side of that, right, is understanding that I'm the one that understands what elite looks like. Like I'm the one that's been around Super Bowl champions, been around, all these people that have been successful at a really high level. The other people in my organization may not even know what that looks like. And so it's my job then to be that lighthouse, right? And be that guide of like, hey, here's how we're going to do this. Here's what it's supposed to look like. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck with that, where they hire people, especially in a small business early on. You hire people and you just expect them to know what winning looks like. Well, what winning looks like for them from their previous role may look very, very different, especially in a startup, right? And that was kind of the piece that I had to learn as well. So that was a big challenge for me. The other big challenge I definitely want to highlight, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through it, is flipping the switch from needing the external validation to then letting go of everybody else's judgment. Right. And so what I mean by that is when you first roll a product out, product, service, whatever it is, you need the market to validate that that product is valuable and is worth somebody purchasing. As soon as you get that market validation, you have to narrow your scope of influence so quickly. Like you have to let go, because if you continue to take advice and feedback from every Tom, Sally, and Joe on the street, you're never going to get anything done. Right. And so for me, it was getting to that point of figuring out who our ideal client was and dialing in on that feedback, right? And getting away from, okay, all these people that are on the periphery, and being able to say, hey, this person didn't like what we did, right? But they're not our client, right? That's not who we're trying to sell to. And so their feedback no longer matters. And that's hard in today's entrepreneurial landscape because of the social media aspect of marketing, right? You're doing a lot of social media marketing. Now, yes, you can do targeted ads. You can do all these things that almost guarantee that you're in front of your ideal customer, but you're still going to catch the algorithm from time to time where you get in front of a bunch of people that just downright disagree with your stuff. And so you have to be able to let that go and say, hey, those people aren't the people that we're trying to sell to, and get really comfortable with that. And so one of the things that we did for our business was actually reframe the terminology that we use. So we no longer use the word sales in our business. We talk about recruiting. We recruit customers that are a fit for us, and we're a fit for them. That's what we do. And so everything, every internal document, every internal communication that we talk about from a quote unquote sales standpoint, it's titled recruiting. What are we doing from a recruiting standpoint? And the reason for that is because it puts out there that exclusivity within our business. We know as a team, we're not for everybody, and we're okay with that. And that was the fastest way to alleviate kind of those internal or those external voices that were coming in, especially early on in the business. And then, again, we all run into the scaling issues, and how do you figure out, from a time management standpoint, flipping the switch from the hustler to the CEO. And that's admittedly something I'm still working through, but it's been a wild ride, man. I could write a whole book on the lessons I've learned in the last 5 years.
That's great, though. Redefining the terms to fit your business model is brilliant. And I mean, I love that you call sales recruitment, because it really does make sense. I mean, I do coaching as well. And I am recruiting people. And there's people who I one time had a person go watch this whole video where I talked about how they could reduce how many hours they work, book a call off that video. I know this from the Google link. And then get on the call, and all they did was argue with me that it's impossible to cut your hours. And I just kept thinking, definitely not the person for me. We're not.
Guy, yep.
I actually didn't even make an offer to that person. I just was, well, thank you so much for meeting. Clearly, we have some differences, and I moved on. And I really think that's how businesses can be successful. I mean, you see too many people out there these days that preach the niche down, but then they're the be all end all for everybody, and it just doesn't. It's kind of contradictory. So we've talked a lot about leadership development. What red flags indicate someone is not ready to lead?
Oh man, if they don't know why they want to lead, if they're not clear on why they want to be in a leadership role, they probably shouldn't be in a leadership role. Thanks. And we see that a lot, right? Where you hire or you promote, more so in the promotion standpoint, definitely, but where somebody is, we'll use sales, for example, they're the highest performing sales rep for 6 quarters in a row. And so all of a sudden we promote them to VP of sales. Well, why? Why do they want to lead? Do they have any interest in leading? Right. And you have to have those conversations, and you have to ask and be honest with them and say, hey, why do you want to be in front of people? Why do you want to be the leader? Why would people benefit from your leadership? Like, why are you worth following? And a lot of times that will help people get clear, because you'd be surprised how many answer is going to be, well, it's the next logical step in my career. Well,
or it means more money.
It means more money, right? Exactly. Well, then maybe this isn't the role for you. Maybe you need to go find, a high ticket sales job or something else where the commission's better, whatever that may be. That's a personal decision. But we need to get very clear on why you want to lead, right? So that's a red flag. First off, is if they don't know why they want to lead, then absolutely not. We're not, you're definitely not the guy or girl for me. The second thing is somebody that doesn't know who they are. right? Your vision, your mission, your values. You should be able to answer those questions at the drop of a dime. We learn in college, right, about elevator pitches. Everybody's like, oh, you got to have your elevator pitch ready just in case you end up on the elevator with Mark Cuban or somebody, and you can pitch them and change your life, right? But really, to me, your elevator pitch needs to be your vision, mission, and values. Who are you? Right. I believe in jockeys, not horses. And so I'm always looking at, does this person know who they are? And do they know that without a doubt? And are they willing to go beyond the point of convenience? Right. So what I mean by that is it's easy to say that these are your values when it's 75 and sunny. I want to see, can you stick to those values when your back's against the wall, your numbers are down, and you have a quota to hit? Can you still be that same leader? Right. And so the easiest way to find those types of questions out is to have those conversations with your people. Right. If you're looking at somebody from a leadership role, let's talk about it. Tell me, who are you? Like, not from a business standpoint. Don't regurgitate the vision, mission, values of the company. Give me your personal vision, mission, and values. And I'll give you an exercise that we do with our team. When we bring somebody on, they know our company vision, mission, and values. I ask them their vision, mission, and values, and then I ask them, how will that show up in the business? Right. So how will that show? If you're our finance director, right, or our VP of operations, he gave a great answer. I asked him his vision, mission, and values. I said, how does that marry with what we do, and how's it going to show up? And he talked through everything step by step by step. And I was like, okay, this is a guy who's very clear on who he is and very clear on how that's going to show up in his leadership style. So if you don't know that piece, you're a social chameleon, so to say, but not the good kind. Right. You're the kind that you just don't know what color you're supposed to be. Right. You're just changing to whatever environment. Yeah. Whatever environment you're in. So that's another one. And then the third one is somebody that operates from a fear mindset. Anybody that operates from a scarcity mindset or a fear mindset, meaning they always want to talk about the why we can't do something, or what could go wrong. It's not bad to understand what could go wrong. It is bad to verbalize it all the time, right? So we have to have people that, instead of saying why, say why not, right? And what I mean by that is, like, don't tell me why we can't do something. Just tell me, like, what would it look like if we could? Let's have that conversation, right? So I think those are some red flags that I look for. Obviously the big three, right? BCD: blaming, complaining, and defending. Anybody that does any of those three is immediately, they're on my radar and I'm watching you, because there's something not right there.
Yeah, no, the why not thing, that's a big one with software developers. I could sit in meetings with software developers and then say, oh no, we can't do that. And then afterwards I'll say to them, of course we can do that. Why did you say we couldn't do that? I don't really want to do it. That's why people say that stuff.
Yes.
So the why not part, that's excellent. So, okay, look, I'm gonna move into some more unusual questions, and we'll have like two, and then we'll land the plane. All right. So if there was an alternate universe where you never became a coach, horror of horrors, what career do you think you would have pursued?
Oh man, what's crazy? When I was young, I wanted to be a lawyer. I was really, I have family. I have an aunt that's a lawyer, and I was always interested in persuasion and the ability to prove a point based on facts and based on merit, and then get somebody to come around to your point of view. Like, I love that. And it showed up in my coaching as well, because I became like the guy that if somebody's a hard case or a lost cause, they send them to me. Like, if there was a player that they couldn't get to, they would send them to me, because I'm somebody that I love that persuasion aspect of the human experience. I think it's really cool.
So last question, what's the weirdest pregame or pre-speech ritual that you have?
Oh, wow. That's another good one. Honestly, I treat my speech days when I give a talk, I treat it exactly the same as I did as a coach. Everything is exactly the same. I wake up at the same time. Probably the weirdest one is that before I get out of the shower, I turn the shower to completely cold. And I stay in there as long as I possibly can. And I just deal with the cold, deal with the discomfort. And generally my rule of thumb is I can't get out until my breathing is normal. And it's a big shock when you go from a hot shower to a cold shower, and you do it quick. You just hit the handle and let it rip. And so, yeah, that's usually one. The other thing is I always chew the same brand of gum and drink the same water. always the same. And so I have to find a gas station that has, and I'll go to multiple gas stations if I can't find it. So it's always the same.
And you know what's funny about that? It speaks back to mindset. Like it's just
Mhm.
something you've done, and it's led you to where you are, and it might not have anything to do with it, but it just makes you more comfortable, right? So I mean, I think that's half the battle, just being comfortable in your skin and the role that you're in. So, all right, man. Well, I really appreciate the time you spend here. Why don't you let our listeners know how they can find you if they want to get in touch?
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. First off,
No problem.
yeah, you can find us on the web, edgeleadershipacademy.com. You can also reach out to me directly on any social media. I'm at Coach D Kitch on all of those things. Little tip for your listeners: if you want to skip the line and get right to me, not to my team, I run my own LinkedIn and I run my own Instagram. So those two social media platforms are me directly. That is not my team. So if you have a question or something you want to get straight to us, that's where you go for that. We also have the Finish Friday newsletter, which comes out every Friday. That's a free thing you can sign up for. It's available on our website. It's just literally my thoughts every Friday. I send them out. It could be motivation, it could be leadership, it could be performance, something within that realm. But it's generally personal anecdote, and there's some good actionable things in there. And then we have the Built Not Born podcast as well. Season 4, excuse me, will be rolling out this month. So I'm excited to get that launched. So you guys can check that out wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, man, thank you so much for having me, bro. This has been so fun.
Anytime. Yeah, no, I love speaking with you. It's great. I mean, I actually remember, gosh, it was a few weeks ago, and you posted about Finish Friday, and you got a lot of feedback from people on that. And I just don't understand how anyone can argue with the concept, because I mean, it's reality. You know, you got to finish. People who have a billion unfinished projects might want to start looking and maybe go get some therapy or something, because there's a reason you're not getting across the finish line. So, all right, man. Well, thanks so much for being here again. Everybody out there, thanks for listening. We have new episodes of Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube and LinkedIn. And if you want to reach out to David, he gave you his contact information is up there on the screen. So please do so. And thanks again for being a listener.